Blinkit, as you know, is the market leader. Has done incredibly well over the past 12 to 18 months.
That's Sitaraman G, the deputy editor here at the Ken. Last week, we got on a call with him to understand where things stand for Blinkit today. Remember, Blinkit, like Sita mentioned, has so far been the undisputed leader of the quick commerce race.
But what has happened lately with the entry of Flipkart Minutes and Big Basket expanding, and even Zepto and Instamart becoming a lot more aggressive, Blinkit, which was on the verge of profitability, it closed its latest quarter with losses of over 100 crore.
Sita writes about retail and technology here at the Ken, and since he helped shortlist the top 10 teams that made it to the finals of the Ken's Case competition, I invited him on this episode to hear his take on the two teams that were shortlisted for their billion-dollar strategies for Blinkit. This is the third episode of the mini-series, and if you're new here and haven't listened to the first two episodes, I strongly suggest that you do. But for now, let me tell you what is at stake. 10 teams, 10 minutes, and 10 lakh rupees. 2 months ago, we posed a challenge to some of India's brightest and most creative minds at the country's top business schools.
In 3 sentences, the challenge before you is: number 1, you're a quick commerce company. Number 2, you have $1 billion. Number 3, how will you win? That's it.
That was Praveen Gopal Krishnan, the Chief Operating Officer of the Ken and the author of our newsletter, The Nut Graph. Our in-house team, headed by PGK, shortlisted 10 teams out of nearly 100. And over 6 episodes, you will hear their ambitious and creative pitches, all rooted in the real world and all centered around 5 quick commerce platforms that have completely changed the way we all shop. In the end, one strategy and one team wins and goes home with the 10 lakh rupee prize. In this episode, we dive into 2 drastically different strategies. One focuses on sustainability, while the other wants to amp up the aggression. In many ways, polar opposite strategies.
Now, winning for us is simple yet ambitious. To make 5-minute delivery the new normal.
That is Team TekKen from IIM Kozhikode. The whole focus of their strategy was making 5-minute deliveries happen. Pretty audacious, pretty bold. And then up against them is Team Outliers from IIM Ahmedabad.
For us, winning is improving AOV and finally leading to profitability. And our time horizon is 30 months. So, quick commerce is a unit economics game, and we barely operate with a margin of 2 to 3%. And we believe improving AOV is the best possible way to improve the margins. And we believe that scale alone won't create long-lasting brand. We need sustainable profits for that.
Outliers came up with a 3-pronged strategy to do that. One part of which was launching a 4-hour delivery arm for certain orders. 5 minutes versus 4 hours. Which one can help Blinkit keep from losing its edge as the reigning market leader? Let's find out. I'm Rahel, and this is A Billion in 10 Minutes. You heard from Sita a little while ago. He said that Blinkit is the clear market leader, but now with Zepto and Flipkart Minutes entering the scene so aggressively, Blinkit's dominance is no longer a given.
See, I mean, most people would want to go with, a new entrant, because you have a lot more room in terms of what you can do. Right? Blinkit is already the market leader. So where does Blinkit go from here? Okay, you up your market share from 40% to 50% or 60%, right? No company has got as much attention in the quick commerce space as Blinkit, partially because Blinkit is part of Zomato, which is listed, right? And its numbers are quite visible, right? So, but the strategies, the teams that did choose Blinkit, they did have some interesting ways of making Blinkit quote-unquote win.
Last week, my colleague Nuha Bubere caught up with Team Outliers from IIM Ahmedabad. You heard her in the last episode of the series speaking about Big Basket. She covers quick commerce for the Ken, and she wanted to understand their winning strategy for Blinkit firsthand.
So Evan, Aslam and Ankit, very curious about your team name. Why do you say that you are Outliers?
So something that keeps us in a different footing is our background. So I am basically a lawyer, and after that I've had an entrepreneurial venture. Evan is an engineer. He has completed his BTech from NIT Trichy, and then he has worked in Tata Steel. And Ankit, he's a fresher and he's an aerospace engineer. So all of us have done some sort of thing maybe in our life. So that stands apart. So when we thought about like actually participating in a case competition, we thought like something that resonates with our behavior or like our background should actually be there as a team name. So then we gave it as Outliers, and this is a team name that we gave for all of our case competition that we have participated as a team.
What's interesting is that once they heard the problem statement and decided they wanted to be Blinkit for this competition, they didn't immediately start thinking about their strategy. Instead, they tried to understand their competitors better.
So before coming up with the strategies, we actually visited the dark stores of some of these players or competitors. And the insight or the knowledge or the learning that we got from these visits were humongous. We knew that how these dark stores worked, and they used to deliver in maybe 10 or 15 minutes. But the complete optimization that they have brought into a like 1500 square feet room is quite splendid. So once we visited the store, we understood that the strategies that we should put forward can't be about operational efficiency, because all of these competitors or players were operationally more or less efficient.
So they came up with a strategy that was focused on sustainability and achieving profitability. And they wanted to do that in 3 ways. Number 1, by introducing a subscription model. Number 2, through category expansion and introducing 4-hour deliveries. And number 3, by introducing virtual brand stores. Now, for the first part of their strategy, introducing some sort of monthly subscription model, Team Outliers came up with something called a Blinkit box. In their presentation, it's this big yellow plastic box with Blinkit branding that you can essentially keep at your doorstep.
We want to put it like an aspirational product. Maybe people who are purchased from Blinkit for over a particular value, maybe 10,000 or above, they get an option to get this Blinkit boxes in a subsidized manner or free during the initial phases. So this will actually instill curiosity in the neighbors or like people who are seeing this. And this will also lead to a newer model where they can move on to subscription or daily buying.
That brings us to the second part of their strategy. Now, naturally, category expansion made it to a bunch of pitches, but the Outliers were thinking less about the categories they would add and more about the logistics of it all.
The only way of going forward or expanding the average order value was increasing the categories. So the most of the players were actually doing it. But there are limitations to the categories that they could actually add up to the the visibility in the app. It was limited by the space or the screen space. So we thought of like bringing in a new 4-hour kind of delivery where the higher category or the bigger size products that are low frequency, high margin products can be included without cluttering the current UI or UX.
Aslam just mentioned his team's proposal to introduce 4-hour deliveries. Now, here's how it'll work. So, say you hypothetically order something like a mobile phone or a television, high margin, low frequency. What the Outliers are saying is that you won't get it in 10 minutes because instead of being picked up from your nearest dark store, it'll be picked up from the mother warehouse that feeds these dark stores.
We knew that the current dark houses are optimized to the fullest. So these 4-hour deliveries could be done using the mother warehouse, and the complete optimization, the mother warehouses can also be optimized, and maybe 1 or 2 mother warehouse can be added where the high volume, like large size product could be placed, especially electronics or other things like that.
And finally, brand stores. They see it as a way for new brands to showcase their products on Blinkit. It's very similar to what you would see on an e-commerce site like, say, Nykaa or Myntra, where one brand, for instance, L'Oreal, would feature its products as a banner right on top of the site or app.
So we thought of adding a separate UI where the brands, like new age brands, can some sort of pay Blinkit, and they can have their brand store. So these will be virtual stores where they can have their brand theme and they can list out some of their star products. So we'll be optimizing this with a 4-hour delivery fleet initially. And if you're able to see the traction, we can add this particular product, maybe 1 or 2 products, like people are like more intrigued and they want it more. So we'll add it to the 10-minute delivery stream, and we will add that 1 or 2 product to the current SKU. So these were like, maybe in brief, these are the 3 strategies that we used.
And then we have Team TekKen. Arpit, Manya and Sakshi from IIM Kozhikode. Once again, Two IIMs pitted against each other. Now, this team very boldly said they would do one thing and one thing alone with the $1 billion.
So the heart of our strategy is the 5 minute delivery.
Now, if you're thinking 10 minutes to 5 minutes, how hard can it be? Let me tell you, it is much more complicated than you think. Some may say it is a logistical nightmare. So, why did they decide to go down this route in the first place?
Yeah. So when we were thinking about building up on a strategy that will actually be sort of a winning strategy, we understand that you have to take hard choices, and when you make hard choices, it is either a win or a very bad loss. And while we were discussing, so one thing came to my mind, which is usually very fitting in the Indian context, that everyone over here relies a lot on 5 minutes. For example, like when we call our friends, they almost say like, "Abhi 5 minutes mein aata hu." And so that idea stuck to my mind, and we understood that a lot of things, if done like at the urgency of these things, that can be a really exponential make or break for the quick commerce industry.
Now, all three of them have done a fair few case competitions, which is why we know how important it is to make hard choices, but also to know how to back them up. In this case, they have to figure out how to make 5-minute deliveries happen, which is how they came up with the concept of light stores. Get it? Light, dark.
So that is how we sort of thought about building the infrastructure around it, and we sort of introduced the concept of light stores. So we took a lot of examples from hyperlocal delivery models, and then we understood that we can sort of innovate on those grounds, and the infrastructure can be built upon those lines.
Light stores are like scaled down dark stores. So they're smaller, located even closer to residential areas or offices or wherever they get the most orders, and they are stocked with specific types of items. Most of their shelves, 55% to be exact, will be stocked with what Team TekKen calls party and munching essentials. Things like chips, soda, and ice cream. Then 30% of their inventory will be kitchen essentials: rice, atta, veggies, oil, that sort of thing. And the final 15% will be personal care items like soap or shampoo.
So what we decided was that we have to think of an infrastructure where exactly we can deliver what we promise. It has to be narrowed down to particular cities. When we were thinking about the strategy, we knew that we cannot expand it to every nook and corner of the country. It has to be done in certain tier one cities where there is where there is high density of population, and the accessibility is also really quicker.
Now, while Outliers are thinking about building a sustainable business model, slowing things down even, TekKen is doing the opposite. They are one-upping their competitors and raising the stakes of the quick commerce game.
So to add to like the strategy bit of it, I think we didn't think 10 minutes was also possible at a point of time. So we that's a risky bet that the company should be willing to take, I think, if they want to gain that competitive advantage. And I think that's why we wanted to go very, very bold on this. And that's the reason we picked this as the final decision.
So there you have it. Two completely contrasting strategies, but only one can win and make it to the top 5, one step closer to that 10 lakh rupee grand prize. This is when we bring Praveen back to tell us what worked and what didn't, and which strategy wins this round.
I don't think there were two teams in any category which are completely different in the way they were thinking about the problem. If you look at Outliers, which is the team from IIM Ahmedabad, they essentially had a strategy that was very different from what Blinkit is doing right now in the real world. So what they're basically saying is, look, we need to slow this down a little. We need to make sure that everybody wins, and we are responsible as market leaders for setting up the ecosystem, which I understand. But you also see the philosophy is also fairly clear, which is that this thing that we are doing right now with 10 minutes cannot be sustainable for everything and anything. So we need to have some amount of responsibility and sustainability in order to like scale some things back. Let's dial down the madness a bit. It's not a bad pitch, right? And to basically say that you have brand stores and all of this, it's not a bad. I think it's a pretty decent pitch. And I will say that um, they actually were a team that came very, very, very close, like in for the overall championship, in the sense that they were actually a phenomenal team, and it was basically, as that said, no, in that World Cup final, it's like by the barest of margin.
Okay, but let's talk about TekKen, right? Because I think it would be fair to say that their pitch was possibly amongst the boldest and kind of most audacious, right? They put all their money behind this one thing.
Yeah, that's correct. I felt coming in, when I looked at the 10 teams, this was the team that had the sharpest pitch of all. Like, their narrative was unforgettable. Like, even when I read it, like, I remember I saw like almost close to 100 entries, and most of them are, while you're reading it, you've forgotten what it is at the end of the sentence. But TekKen's 5-minute pitch, I just stopped and I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is quite crazy. I mean, but it's interesting. At least you're clear in what you want to do. It was also a team that spent a lot of time thinking about and arguing, how do you market this? Which I think, ironically, is what didn't work for them. I don't know these students personally, but my sense is that they are students who gravitate more closely towards marketing, because they had spent some time in their presentation as well saying, oh, we have 5 minutes. If we do 5 minutes, this is how we will market it. Which, I mean, just me as a spectator, I was thinking, if you were promised 5-minute delivery, why would you market it? Okay, that is the marketing. Okay, your marketing writes itself. They did a very good pitch. They did a very good narrative as well. But I think two things didn't work. One was, it wasn't really clear and convincing that 5 minutes is really going to be such a big differentiator as compared to 10 minutes. The second thing was more important, which is, the minute you go from 10 minutes to 5 minutes, the number of stores and the density of stores that you have to create, it's not linear. It's probably exponential. You really need to know the math of your dark store properly, right? So if they had spent a little less time on marketing and spent some more time saying, I know what you're thinking, and you need to go from 10 to 5 minutes requires this explosion of dark stores, which is going to be so expensive and so difficult and such a big investment. Let us do the math here and let me show you that it's actually not. It only is going to cost us this much, and that we're going to get. I think that would have made it a much more persuasive pitch.
So there you have it. It was very close, but the winner of this round is Team Outliers. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Next up is Flipkart Minutes. Thank you for listening to 1 Billion in 10 Minutes, a 6-part mini-series based on the Ken's first ever case competition. This episode was produced by me, Rahel Philipose, and Nuha Bubere. It was edited by Rajiv CN. Don't forget to like and share this episode, and also write to me at rahel@the-ken.com. Let me know what you think about this podcast, as well as which pitch you thought was stronger.